Hey everybody, happy Thursday night. Thanks so much for jumping on. For those of you who are just joining the stream, we'll get started here in just a minute. It is a busy Thursday night weather-wise. We're tracking a lot out in the tropics. There's three different systems to talk about. One of those is out in the Atlantic, the other two in the Eastern Pacific, and all three have the potential to bring impacts to land at some point down the road. Nothing in the immediate future or the next day or two, but especially as we start getting towards the weekend with the system out in the Eastern Pacific, Hurricane Kiko, and then late next week into the middle of September, we'll start talking more about potential impacts with our system out in the Atlantic, which again, there's a lot of questions about that one as well. So we'll get started here in just a second as we wait for a few more folks to jump on. Hopefully everybody's having a good week, a good Thursday night. And by the way, as we go through this and start talking and chatting, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments. I'll do my very best to answer whatever you ask. Let me know where you're watching from here on a Thursday night and tuning in from. Would love to hear. We'll wait just another second longer here, and then we'll go ahead and get started and talk about what's happening weather-wise. So a few different things we're going to talk about tonight. Excuse me, I'm fighting a little bit of a cold, as you probably hear it in my voice, but mostly the tropics and the three different systems out in the tropics. We're also going to be talking a little bit about the severe weather threat tomorrow out in the Ohio Valley as well, and just generally all things that are happening weather-wise. So again, thanks so much for watching. We'll get started probably right about now. I think there's a good amount of you who are tuning in right now and watching live. Some of you are watching from Kentucky. Hello from Kentucky. Hello from Oklahoma, says Taylor. And hello from Texas, Tornado Fan 333. Hope all of you are having a good Thursday night and good week. We're almost to the weekend once again. This was a shortened work week, so the good news is we're almost done already with the week and to the weekend. All right, let's go ahead and get started here. And I'll kind of pause every couple of minutes and look at the comments and answer some of the questions that you guys may have about what we're chatting about. And like I said, this is mainly a tropical weather chat, but also a little bit about a severe weather threat tomorrow that could sort of develop across the Ohio Valley. Of course, it is September now, so we're starting to get into the second part of severe weather season. This one not nearly as active as a spring, but we do sometimes get some pretty busy severe weather events, especially across the Ohio Valley and the Deep South during the month of September, and that can kind of sometimes spill over into October and November with our fall severe weather season. But we'll start with tropics, and things out in the tropical Atlantic right now are still fairly quiet, except we have one area of interest that we're starting to pay attention to. And the reason we're paying attention to it is because we're seeing a few more signs in the computer models that there could be some development here into a tropical depression and maybe a tropical storm as early as later this week, maybe into this weekend. But for right now, it's just a broad area of low pressure associated with a tropical wave out here in the Eastern Atlantic. The National Hurricane Center is calling this Invest 91, and right now there is a 60% chance of development due to a tropical depression over the next 48 hours. That's 2 days. And then down the road over the next 7 days, odds increase to about a 90% chance. So more than likely, we're going to have a tropical depression on our hands here over the next 2 to 3 days, and then further intensification potentially into a tropical storm is possible from there. Still some uncertainty as to whether or not this system becomes a hurricane down the road, but some of the environmental ingredients are there, and so that's why this one sort of has some of the attention of meteorologists and the National Hurricane Center, has our eyes sort of perk up a little bit. It's one of those that bears watching. Here's the good news, and it's sort of like a coin, right? There's a good news, bad news, and the good news is this is a very slow-moving system. On the flip side to that, on the flip side of our coin, because it's a slow-moving system, it's going to be a while that we're watching this one, and a while until we know any answers about if it's going to impact the U.S. mainland. Lesser Antilles, Puerto Rico could be at play for this as we get towards the middle of next week and beyond. Again, slow moving west at 5 to 10 miles per hour. So there's time to watch this, but it is going to be probably another 10 to 14 days until we start talking about any potential impacts to the U.S. mainland, if that was to happen or not. And there are some factors that'll play into whether or not there are going to be any impacts at all from this one. But bottom line, right now, watching a disturbance out in the eastern Atlantic. That is a 60% chance of development here over the next 48 hours into a tropical depression, and then a 90% chance over the next 7 days. So the takeaway message from that is more than likely, yes, we're going to have a tropical depression on our hands at least over the next 2 to 3 days, and then possibly beyond that, a tropical storm. And right now, this is moving slowly westward at a crawl, only at about 5 to 10 miles per hour. So here's a broad view across the tropical Atlantic. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, things overall actually pretty quiet. The only spot that we're really watching right now is our tropical wave, broad area of low pressure out here in the eastern Atlantic. Tonight, it doesn't look super organized. There are some towering thunderstorm tops and some convection that's trying to take off a little bit. But in terms of getting to a tropical storm, or to that tropical storm strength here in the next day or two, it's unlikely, but tropical depression is a little bit more likely over the next 48 hours to 72 hours. We'll zoom in a little bit closer, show you a better view here of the Invest, and you can see this is slowly loading. But again, showers, thunderstorms kind of rotating around here. You get that broad swirl, that counterclockwise swirl where the low pressure is. And so as further intensification takes place, we'll likely get up to a tropical depression here over the next 48 hours to 72 hours. And then from that point forward, the further the system starts to intensify, the better data that we're going to get about where it heads eventually. But for now, the immediate path is westward over the tropical Atlantic, only at about 5 to 10 miles per hour or so. So let's start pulling out some of the computer data here and looking at the models and their ensembles. We'll start with the ensembles. And the reason we look at ensembles, we're looking at the GEFS, which is the ensemble models of the GFS, the American computer model. And the reason we look at it is because there are multiple different solutions here as to what could take place and the eventual track of our low pressure system, 91L. The bottom line here is that there isn't yet a definitive answer as to where this storm system is going to track. And these computer models, their ensembles, are made up of multiple different ensembles, give us different scenarios that could take place based on different environmental conditions. And so we look at all of those ensembles to give us a range of possibilities instead of looking at one single computer model run. This gives us a little bit wider of array of options as to what could potentially happen. So we're not really ruling anything out. We're looking at all of our different options, which is what you want to do this far out. And remember, it's slow moving, only moving west at about 5 to 10 miles per hour. So here we go. We're looking at the GEFS ensembles and look at sort of the timeline here. And I'll pull the screen a little bit closer towards the center for you to see. So here is the system itself. And over the next few days, so today, again, is Thursday, and what you're looking at here is the projected possible locations of where the center of the low could be by the different members of the ensemble here as we get towards Tuesday. So this is Tuesday. It's only moved, several hundred miles out to the west. By the way, out here are the Lesser Antilles. More than likely by this point, as we get towards Tuesday, Wednesday of middle of next week, we do have a tropical depression, maybe a tropical storm on our hands, with environmental conditions gradually getting more favorable here for development towards the middle to latter part of next week. All right, let's keep rolling forward. As we get towards Wednesday into Thursday, and the American model is not super keen on the idea of this system taking off into anything other than maybe a tropical depression or a low-end tropical storm. But regardless, we're showing it to you because it's one of the possibilities, is that not much comes from this. Scenario number one is not much comes from this, at least according to the GEFS and its ensembles. You get a weak tropical system emerging here out towards the Lesser Antilles by Thursday of next week. So this puts us at September the 11th, just to give you a rough time frame. And finally is, again, by the middle and end of next week, 11th, 12th time frame, finally, you start to see the system potentially getting closer to the Lesser Antilles, but still not a definitive track for sure. So this is sort of one scenario is you get a weaker system that works westward. You can see all the different ensemble members here sort of displaced as to where they want to track this. Some of them take it north of the islands, others tracking closer to the islands, others kind of keep it south of the islands. That is not super unusual for this point in time when we still have a ways to go with this and we're about a week out until it gets closer to the islands. That's not even factoring in any potential land impacts to the mainland U.S. As we get towards Friday, Saturday, again, this is next week, a week out, is when finally we could start seeing a little bit more in the way of the system getting closer potentially to the east coast of the U.S. But according to the GEFS, we don't get much out of this at all. So that's just sort of scenario number one. Now I'm going to show you the European ensemble members, and this one is a little bit more aggressive. The Euro is a little bit more aggressive, and its ensembles in what may eventually come out of this. So let me take you through the timeline here. And first of all, this is now Sunday. So today's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There are a lot more ensemble members in the Euro compared to the American model that do develop the system pretty quickly from a tropical depression, potentially into a tropical storm as soon as Sunday of this upcoming weekend. Still, regardless, it's a slow mover. So by Sunday into Monday, more than likely, the system's only moved a few hundred miles to the west of where it's currently located. But regardless, at least according to the Euro and its ensembles, we start to get a little bit more development here into potentially a tropical storm by Sunday of this weekend and then into early next week. So now here comes Monday into Tuesday, still looking at the westward movement here of what could potentially be a tropical depression, tropical storm, maybe a hurricane. You start seeing some of the members of the Euro ensemble getting into the 900 millibar range, 982. So a stronger system, not completely out of the question, moving west at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And as we get towards Tuesday into Wednesday, you start seeing some of these L's. Those are the lows. Those are the projected possible location. The different members here, all those different L's represent each different member of the European ensemble that show where this could be. As you get towards early next week, some of these start getting it closer to the Lesser Antilles here, the islands. That could be at play for potentially some impacts by Tuesday into Wednesday. Look at how many members there are that show this a wide range of possibilities here, anywhere from, again, several hundred miles to the north of the islands. Other members track this right through the islands. Others stay south of the islands, kind of merging here, staying to the north of South America. So multiple different scenarios at play, even within the Euro's own ensembles. There is little to no consensus at this point as to the eventual path of this. But regardless, compared to the American model, the Euro does develop this a little bit quicker. It also is quite a bit stronger. There are more members that show the possibility of a tropical storm or maybe a hurricane by next week, Friday, tracking westward towards the islands. And again, the Lesser Antilles would be at play for potential impacts. That looks a lot different than what we showed you a second ago, what I showed you a minute ago with the American model, which does not develop the system quite as vigorously or intensely as the Euro does. So two different scenarios at play. One of these is the American model, which doesn't show much development at all in this system. You could get a little tropical depression, a quick-hitting tropical storm. The members are kind of all over the place in the American model as to where that tropical system would go. The European model, on the other hand, also a wide range of possibilities as to where this would eventually track, but there's a little bit more consensus in the idea of a stronger system tracking westward, potentially getting into the islands, putting the islands at play with a strong tropical storm, maybe a hurricane towards Friday of next week. That's still a week out, so there's plenty of time to watch this as it slowly creeps westward at about 5 to 10 miles per hour. But regardless, anybody who lives in the Lesser Antilles will want to pay attention to this one. And like I said at the beginning of the stream, as the system starts to develop a little bit more, we'll get a better idea of where it tracks. the stronger these systems get, more often than not, you get a better idea of where they're going to go. The computer data gets a little bit better. Eventually, you get hurricane hunters that start flying into it. And that's really because of the fact that you get a well-defined low-pressure system that forms in the middle of that system, and that can help kind of determine a more accurate track. And that, again, comes into play. We see that at play with computer models a lot of the times. As you get a more defined low-pressure system, the accuracy of computer models get better. We're not there yet with this one. American model does not develop this one. The European model does develop it into a stronger system, but there's little consensus as to where it would go. You can see the L's all over the place here. Some of that take it north of the islands, other members south of the islands, others right through. And then, of course, whether or not this system tracks through the island, stays north or south, would have implications further down the road. We're talking, again, towards the beginning of the following week as to whether or not this could be a threat to the U.S. So this is going to be kind of a 12 to 14-day type deal until we know whether or not the U.S. would be at play for any potential impacts from this one. But there is confidence right now in at least a tropical depression forming. Most models are on board with that. The discrepancy comes from how strong does it get from that point forward, and then also where does it go? Does it stay north of the islands? Does it track through the islands? At least according to the Euro, there are quite a handful of members that track this right through the Lesser Antilles, potentially getting Puerto Rico, maybe Haiti, the Dominican Republic at play towards the end of next week, middle to latter part of next week, and really getting into next weekend. And there are still a handful of computer models, including the Euro. Let's take you beyond Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of next week, and then now start talking about here Saturday, Sunday, the 13th, 14th of September. Most of the European model members do start to show a curvature up to the north and potentially back out to sea after maybe impacting the islands, but it's too soon to say for sure whether or not that would completely spare the U.S. from any potential impacts. Obviously, we are several days away from getting any data that would really support or mitigate the threat of any potential U.S. impacts. But for right now, at least according to the Euro, there are a handful of members that take this right through the islands as a tropical storm, maybe a hurricane towards the end of next week. Still too far out with any data, European or GFS, American model, to determine any potential impacts to the U.S. If that were to happen, if we were to see any impacts to the U.S., whether that be Florida, into the Gulf or the East Coast, it wouldn't take place until, we're talking about the maybe 15th, 16th, 17th, beyond of September. So still a ways to go until we have to start worrying about that. But for right now, Lesser Antilles, Puerto Rico, you'll want to start paying attention to this one. Computer models all over the place with intensity, also the eventual track. So we'll have to pay attention as to where this will go here over the next few days. That will help determine down the road where it goes after that. And the computer models will get into better agreement again as this one starts to strengthen a little bit. Here is a look at the intensity models, by the way. You're going to see they're kind of all over the place with this. A lot of the intensity models here do show at least a tropical depression into a tropical storm over the next 48 hours to 72 hours, getting into here's 72, 84 hours. Most of the data that we have suggests at least a tropical depression, low-end tropical storm. After that, there are still a handful of computer models, hurricane models as well, that bring this up to Category 1 strength. And then there's about 4 that bring this up to a major hurricane as you get towards hour 132, hour 144. So again, as we get into the weekend and beyond. So can't write off a hurricane, can't write off this staying not quite to hurricane status. There's still a lot of variables at play. This could stay a very weak tropical storm, curve out to the north, not impact the U.S. at all, or we could be dealing with a stronger system on our hands. It also has to deal, of course, with that tropical ridge, high-pressure system out over the open Atlantic that we often deal with this time of year. The Bermuda High, as it's sometimes called. The strength of that high will come into play when we start talking about the eventual track of this system down the road. So a lot of variables and, unfortunately, not a lot of answers yet when it comes to 91L. But that's sort of a look at what to expect, at least over the next couple of days. So I know it's been a little bit since I've looked through your comments. I do want to kind of take a peek at least at a few of your comments. And again, I apologize. I'm kind of fighting a head cold, so if my voice sounds a little raspy, that's why. Some of these here, questions about Delaware at play. Is Delaware in danger? It's just too soon to say for sure, right? We're still about 14, 15 days out from any potential impacts to the mainland U.S. We can tell you that folks in the Lesser Antilles, specifically getting into spots like Puerto Rico, will want to pay attention to this one because here's why. And again, we're going back to the Euro Ensemble members, and we show you the ensembles because they show us a variety of different solutions that could come into play instead of one single computer model run. We're looking at several different solutions of what could happen with the different ensemble members based on different environmental conditions, right? A lot of the ensemble members from the Euro do develop this into a tropical storm, maybe a hurricane towards the middle of next week. It does take it west-northwestward, getting closer to the islands as maybe a hurricane, and this is just the Euro, by next Friday into Saturday, getting into the Lesser Antilles, potentially seeing some impacts towards Puerto Rico Friday into Saturday. On the other hand, the American computer models and its ensemble members don't develop the system quite as vigorously. In fact, there's only a handful of members that do develop this into a tropical storm, but it too could potentially, if the American model's forecast was to verify, even at a lesser strength, again, tropical depression, tropical storm, latter part of next week, getting closer to the islands, there's still a lot of discrepancy as to where exactly this would track, but at least according to the American model, it would be a far less intense system, not quite as vigorous. So a handful of different solutions, the models all over the place here tonight, and there really isn't one single model that we're going to lean heavily on as compared to the others, just because it's still so early on, and also because the system is only moving to the west. This tropical wave is only moving west at about 5 to 10 miles per hour. So Puerto Rico, this will be one you'll want to pay attention to heading into next week. For this weekend, not much you need to do. Just kind of monitor the forecast, and the next week really zone in, pay attention to exactly where this is going to go. Specifically next week, the track for next week. I think as we get to the end of this weekend, and then early next week, we'll have a little bit more knowledge as to what the system's doing in terms of intensity, but also a better idea of its track over the next 4 to 5 days. Somebody asked, can we see a close-up of what 91L is looking like? And here's a close-up of what it looks like here tonight. It is getting better organized slowly. It is fighting off a little shear out there in the tropical Atlantic. It is not anywhere near tropical storm strength just yet. This is just kind of a broad tropical wave with a counterclockwise swirl, low pressure system that will likely get up to tropical depression status. Conditions are favorable for that over the next 48 hours or so. Erica asked, I'm from Florida. Should I be worried? So right now, no need to worry. If you're in the mainland U.S., Florida included, no concern just yet. This will be one we want to watch over the next week and a half, but don't burn yourself out on it because there's going to be plenty of time to determine the track here. Right now, we just don't know where this will go over the next 5 to 6 days. Certainly not in the next 10 to 15 days, but it's probably going to be another good, 12 to 14 days, 2 weeks until we know for sure if this was going to impact or will impact the U.S., including Florida. So this is sort of just a wait and watch, kind of keep checking back for updates over the next few days. But no need to worry just yet. By the way, there's a lot of other activity out there in the tropics besides just this system. I was looking through your comments. I see a couple of questions about, hey, isn't Hawaii about to be hit? Yeah, actually, that's a good question. There is a system out in the eastern Pacific two systems that we're watching out in the Eastern Pacific. Let me show you what we're looking at with Hurricane Kiko, which is right now a major hurricane, Category 3 major hurricane out in the Eastern Pacific. Hurricane Kiko right now going through an eyewall replacement cycle. Essentially what that means is the system is sort of collapsing in on itself and getting reinvigorated. And again, with these strong hurricanes, major hurricanes, they can't say the exact same strength, size, intensity for a continuous period of time. They're constantly changing and evolving. And what we see taking place here is a very clear, well-defined eye that's sort of almost folded in on itself. And now what's likely going to happen is you see new convection, new thunderstorm tops, as really high, intense thunderstorms represented by the pink that I just circled there. That's going to be your new eye wall that's starting to form. And you can even see within the past scan or two, a new eye that's starting to pop out towards the center here, closer to where we have, or just north of where we have the new eye wall that's starting to form. So eye wall replacement cycle underway with major Category 3 Hurricane Kiko that is out in the Eastern Pacific right now, which is slowly churning towards the west, certainly moving a little bit faster than 91L. But let me show you the latest advisory on it. Per the National Hurricane Center, right now, Hurricane Kiko, as mentioned, a major Category 3 hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 130 miles per hour. It is moving slowly west at 9 miles per hour. That westward movement more than likely going to become a little bit more west-northwest over the next couple of days, but it will maintain major hurricane status, if not intensify a little bit more, possibly up to Category 4 as we get towards tomorrow, Friday. So at least through Friday into Saturday, so the first part of this weekend, and maybe into Sunday, we're looking at Hurricane Kiko maintaining major hurricane status, Category 3, potentially Category 4, with a really, really favorable environment for intensification, at least staying the same strength that it is. So maintaining its strength and a favorable environment for at least some intensification here over the next couple of days as this heads, again, westward now and then potentially a little more west-northwestward as we get towards the end of the weekend. Early next week, as this is closer to the Hawaiian Islands, you start seeing a little bit of change in the sea surface temperatures. It'll start to fight off a bit of wind shear, Kiko. And so some gradual weakening will take place before rapid weakening takes place between Monday and Tuesday. So we'll see a little gradual weakening between Sunday and Monday out of major hurricane status down to just Category 2 hurricane. And then beyond that, we're talking Tuesday into Wednesday. More rapid weakening takes place as you see cooler sea surface temperatures, also a little bit of wind shear here. But yes, those are the Hawaiian Islands. And it does look like some impacts are possible, at least for the Big Island by early next week, and then some of the other islands by the middle to latter part of next week in terms of rain and wind. The good news is a lot of rapid weakening expected by the time that Kiko approaches the Hawaiian Islands. Most of the data here tonight would suggest the core part of this storm and the hurricane staying north of the islands. So maybe less in the way of a direct impact, but regardless, still some rain, some wind, with a tropical storm passing very close by to the Hawaiian Islands towards Tuesday into Wednesday of next week. So let me show you the track from the National Hurricane Center. We just saw that. Here's a look at the model track guidance, and you can see a lot of the computer models. By the way, they're all in relatively good agreement, at least compared to the system that we're watching out in the tropical Atlantic, which is all over the place with the model track guidance and the intensity. With Hurricane Kiko, because, again, you have a really well-defined center of circulation, powerful Category 3 storm. The models are latching onto that. They have a pretty good idea, consensus here over the next few days as to what's going to happen, which is a track to the west, and then eventually a little more west-northwest towards the end of the weekend into early next week. And then more than likely, there's a lot of really good consensus here among the models that the center part of Kiko may pass just to the north of the Hawaiian Islands Tuesday into Wednesday of next week, but still close enough by, skirting close enough by, sort of a glancing blow to bring some rain and some wind, possibly some tropical storm winds to the Hawaiian Islands, especially the northern part of each island. Here's a look at the GFS, the 18Z run, and it sort of depicts what I was talking about. Notice Kiko, a major hurricane for the next couple of days, at least for the weekend. And then you see rapid weakening taking place as you get into Monday into Tuesday. Cooler water temperatures, more wind shear comes into play. And then Kiko stays just north, at least according to the GFS, among many other computer models of the Hawaiian Islands, but still close enough by that you start talking about rain and wind impacts to the north side of each of the islands by Wednesday into Thursday. This would bring obviously some really high surf as well. But bottom line is chances of impacts from Kiko and the Hawaiian Islands are increasing. But the good news is more than likely as a storm passes maybe just north of the islands, it'll be a strong tropical storm at most. Rapid weakening will take place. Certainly, at least at this point in time, not looking at a major hurricane passing anywhere close to the Hawaiian Islands. This will weaken down to tropical storm strength by early next week, but still close enough by that we could be talking about impacts to the Hawaiian Islands, especially the north side of the islands, by Tuesday into Wednesday. So time to watch it through the weekend. Obviously, really powerful major Category 3 Hurricane Kiko headed westward tonight at about 9 miles per hour. A eye wall replacement cycle is underway right now. And we'll see how that plays out and sort of the structure of the storm later tonight into tomorrow. So that's system number 2 in the tropics. We talked about 91L. We talked about Kiko. I want to also mention in the Eastern Pacific as well, we also have Tropical Storm Lorena, which is off the coast of Baja California right now. Not a super organized system. Winds at 50 miles per hour, moving northwest at 7 miles per hour. Kind of meanders and hangs out off the coast of Baja California over the next couple of days and through this weekend as it weakens from a tropical storm down into a tropical depression. So the good news here is not looking at any intensification, weakening. In fact, if anything, through this weekend, down to tropical storm or tropical depression status, but obviously a lot of rain and wind is still possible for the west side of Baja California. You get a lot of really high and tall mountains across this part of Mexico, so that does bring in the threat of heavy rainfall that could lead to mudslides. But the interesting part to Tropical Storm Lorena is the remnant moisture, more than likely, is going to get pulled out of Mexico and sent into Texas, it looks like, by this weekend. And so you have a plume of tropical moisture potentially heading into central and southern Texas by Sunday into Monday. That's going to increase the chance of heavy rainfall and flooding. How all this evolves is still a little uncertain, but the Weather Prediction Center already does have a slight risk for flooding out for Sunday and Monday, specifically here across central into southern Texas, with multiple rounds of heavy rainfall. 2 to 3, maybe 4 to 5 inches of rain is possible. We're talking about some big metros at play here as well, including the Austin-San Antonio metro that could come into play for heavy rain that could lead to flooding out of this one. And again, this is all thanks to that tropical moisture that's being pulled eastward, arriving in Texas by Sunday into Monday. I should also mention there's still uncertainty as to where the axis of heavy rainfall sets up, but where that rain does set up, which is more than likely going to be somewhere across central into southern Texas, there will be an increasing threat for some flooding in there as well. So, yeah, 3 tropical systems that we're watching out there. Let me get back over to some of your comments and your questions. I know there's probably quite a few of them. Somebody said, where's Kiko? Kiko is out in the Eastern Pacific, which right now we're tracking this system possibly impacting the Hawaiian Islands by early next week, Monday into Tuesday, as a tropical storm. Most of the guidance has it staying just north, or at least the center part of Kiko staying north of the Hawaiian Islands. Not an issue for the Gulf or for the tropical Atlantic with Kiko. We are watching out in the tropical Atlantic what the National Hurricane Center is calling Invest 91, which right now is just a broad low pressure system, a tropical wave. We're getting a little counterclockwise spin here, and we're watching this closely because environmental conditions are pretty conducive over the next 48 hours for a tropical depression, really conducive over the next week for tropical depression, maybe a tropical storm. The good news with this one is, and here it is out here in the tropical Atlantic, is as it heads westward, it's only moving west at about 5 to 10 miles per hour, which means we have plenty of time to watch this one through the rest of this week, into the weekend, and next week. It's still about 14 days out from any potential impacts to the U.S. That's 2 weeks, plenty of time to watch it. Nothing to worry about for the mainland U.S. However, we're looking at some of the different pieces of data, including the European model ensembles, which are several different members made up of the ensemble, each of which depicts a different solution of what could happen with Invest 91. The American computer model, less aggressive, doesn't develop this one beyond, let's say, tropical depression, tropical storm strength. We're looking at the European right now specifically, though, because more members are on board with the idea of this becoming a tropical storm, potentially a hurricane, as we get into the middle of next week, Tuesday into Wednesday, and there are questions about where it will go. Notice all the different L's here on the map that represents all the different ensemble members' depictions as to where the center of the low pressure of whatever the system is going to become could go. And a lot of our L's, a lot of the members of the European ensemble do bring this closer to the Lesser Antilles as we get towards Wednesday into Thursday, about a week out from now, as a strong tropical storm, potentially a hurricane. Of course, there are a lot of uncertainties as to how specifically this will play out in terms of the track and the intensity, right? This is just one model's ensembles. The other ensemble members with, let's say, the American model, like I said, don't develop this one quite as vigorously. The European model does. And so it's reason for pause, and we pause because it just means we need to pay attention to this to see what happens next week. It is possible, right, that the American model is correct and some of the other models are correct. This doesn't develop into much beyond a tropical storm, a weak tropical storm, and then sort of falls apart as it gets closer to the Lesser Antilles. And really, other than some heavy rainfall, we won't have to worry about. It's also possible it develops into something a little bit stronger, right? Could be a hurricane if the European model and its ensemble members were correct. So the bottom line is, for folks who live in the Lesser Antilles, including Puerto Rico, right? Maybe not exactly in the Lesser Antilles, but a spot that we need to pay attention to. This will be one that you need to watch through the weekend, and then really next week, let's pay attention to where this could go, the intensity of this, and then also its eventual track. As it starts to get a little bit stronger, we'll get a better idea of where its eventual track will go. But for right now, data is all over the place. We have some models that develop this into something strong, others that keep it weak, some models that bring it through the Lesser Antilles, others that keep it north of the islands, others south of the islands into South America. So all over the place with the data. Let's watch, wait, let's see what happens as this gets a little closer to the Lesser Antilles here, potentially Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of next week. If it would impact directly the Lesser Antilles, that would be the time frame that we need to watch for any potential impact from this tropical wave that we're calling 91L right now that is out in the tropical Atlantic. Let's see. Looking through some of your comments here, I saw some of your comments about Kiko, Florida. Again, not anything that we need to be overly concerned about. Mainland U.S. right now, don't need to be worried about this one. Let's watch it, but 12 to 14 days until any potential impacts to the mainland U.S. Plenty of time to watch this, pay attention to how it develops here over the next few days. One thing that is going to kind of play a very pivotal role in the track of this system is our Bermuda High and how strong. Remember, we were talking about this the other week with our system that was out in the Atlantic. How strong this Bermuda high pressure system is will play into, of course, where the what is right now 91L will go, and the steering mechanisms as well. So that's what we have happening in the tropics. One system in the Atlantic, two in the Eastern Pacific. I also want to mention that tomorrow there is also a threat for some strong to severe thunderstorms. I started the stream off by saying that we're starting to get into our second severe weather season across the country, which is during autumn. So typically September, October, November, you start to see a little bit of a spike in severe weather events across the country, usually across the South, sometimes the Midwest. But in this case, for tomorrow, For Friday, there is a risk level 2 out of 5 for severe storms. That is a slight risk across parts of northern Tennessee into much of central Kentucky. This also stretches northward into southern Ohio and also parts of western West Virginia. Surrounding that slight risk, there's a risk level 1 out of 5, or a marginal risk, that includes a much broader area from Little Rock to Memphis, up through parts of Pennsylvania as well. Pittsburgh at play for some strong thunderstorms tomorrow. But the greater risk for scattered strong to severe thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon along a cold front and ahead of that frontal boundary will be out across parts of northern Tennessee through central Kentucky into eastern Kentucky, also southern Ohio and western West Virginia. We have a west to east advancing cold front and a pretty unstable air mass that will develop with some overlap of shear as well tomorrow afternoon. The greatest concerns would be for the potential of some strong to damaging wind gusts. Also, some hail can't be ruled out. I'll show you how this sort of plays out as we look at one of our higher resolution computer models going through time tomorrow afternoon. Here is 4 or 5 o'clock. Showers and thunderstorms start to develop. Could see a few discrete thunderstorms that develop first tomorrow afternoon across western Kentucky. And then from that point forward, they kind of race eastward from there into more of a line or multiple line segments. By tomorrow evening, 8 to 9 o'clock is when we could have a few scattered strong to severe thunderstorms along a broken line moving through central into eastern Kentucky, with the biggest concern once we get that line that'll start to form for some damaging wind gusts and the potential for a little bit of hail. Can't rule out a stray, brief, weak, isolated tornado, but the bigger concern for tomorrow initially, as you see a few isolated cells go up first tomorrow afternoon across central into western Kentucky, will be for the possibility of hail. And then after that, some straight line wind issues as you see more of a line coming together by late tomorrow evening into tomorrow night. And then I think once we get past 11, 12 a.m., the threat for any severe weather will start to wind down, but still some scattered rain showers and thunderstorms rumbling across parts of the Mid-South for tomorrow. Doesn't look like a huge severe weather event, but again, we're starting to get into our second severe weather season during the fall. All right, I think that'll wrap up the live stream. As you can hear, I'm kind of starting to lose my voice a little bit, so I think I'm going to rest it. We'll keep doing some more of these through this week and next week, talking about what's happening out in the tropics. I appreciate everybody for watching tonight, and I will see you back for more live streams. Hope you have a relaxing Thursday night, and